Okay, so let's go straight into our special presentation this morning. And with us we have Dr. Georgina Chami. Dr. Chami is a lecturer at the Institute of International Relations at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus. And she's also a recipient of the Central America Caribbean Fulbright Visiting Scholars Program in 2010. Her research interests include peace and security, international organizations, migration and governance, and higher education and technology. She lectures on contemporary diplomacy and security, migration and international relation theories and research methods. She currently serves as the faculty advisor, Harvard National Model United Nations, and the UWI St. Augustine Model UN Club. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have someone who is who's had quite an indelible mark both in the fields of international relations and also on higher education. And so we look forward to hearing from Dr. Chami as it pertains to AI and really helping us. And Dr. Chami, you could share your screen one time. And Dr. Chami will really enlighten us and really elaborate or provide some insight on the really how we assess artificial intelligence. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I hand over to Dr. Chami. Go right ahead, please.
Good morning, Dr. Zephyrin, and thank you for your kind sentiments. I am just delighted that I was asked by you to share some insights on this area that is extremely topical, but more so rapidly changing the context in which we live and touching every sphere of our life. So let me do the appropriate protocols. So good morning, Chair, and also to the AKIA executive who you have just alluded me to are on board with us, and of course to the online viewers who are with us today. So artificial intelligence, of course, as I just mentioned, is really a subject area that we need to look at very closely in terms of how it's changing our landscape. But there was a stimulation for me getting deeper into research on digital technologies and education. And it all originated when I attended the AKIA conference, that's the Association of Caribbean Higher Education Administrators, in 2023. I was alerted to this conference by SETTLE, which Justin is part of. And honestly, when I attended, I knew no one. But at the end of the conference, I practically knew everyone. So it's a very warm environment, but I was extremely touched by the fact that we had a blend of both administrators and academic staff members, not only from UWI, but many prestigious organizations that are involved in education and by extension, higher education. So I must commend the organizers, and because I have been in attendance since that initial engagement at AKIA, I must commend them for stimulating a lot of discussion and also allowing us the opportunity to present on areas that are the key for us to recognize and support as we continue to enhance our teaching and learning and research platforms. So this year, the team, of course, is transforming the administration of higher ed for enhancing sustainability, inclusivity, and technological process. My observation is that you have different influential thinkers, educators, academic leaders. We have a lot of pro-vice chancellors attend this particular conference, and it's always very enlightening to hear what some of the key decision makers are saying about higher ed and how we can also share opinions and views on it. But what I was most fascinated by in this conference is that forward-thinking approach in terms of how we can really enhance our teaching and learning environments. So we know that technology, I am sure many of you on the portal, whether you have an administrative or academic background, you have recognized how technology have become a very key factor in our lives. So pandemic, post-pandemic, my observation as an educator is that most of my students would love to continue operating online. So I have to constantly adapt and see how I could shape my learning environment as I proceed with teaching my different courses. Of course, my operation now entails the blended mode. So I do have, because I'm a traditionalist when we come to teaching, I do still very much support face-to-face because I am of the opinion that communication, developing of your critical and analytical skills can really only be honed through the face-to-face interaction. So we see smartphones, tablets, smartwatch, social media platforms. I am sure many of you, if I ask for you just to signal on this portal by a thumbs up, how many of you all have WhatsApp? Facebook? Just a thumbs up, so I will just know how many of you all. Yeah, so WhatsApp, Facebooks, yeah, the thumbs are rising. These are all different ways we engage now with not only persons in the educational field, but generally across the board. So it is established that the world is going digital, and the statistics do illustrate how digital we have become. So in 2023, we see that there are now over 5 billion users. Yeah, in 50 years, we see social media, and I will pinpoint when I talk about social media, I could be talking about a number of tools. But shortly, I would show you which platforms are most subscribed to. So we see that there are 5 billion users. And for some of us who are doing research in the area of technological advancement and education, datareportal.com, it's an excellent statistical resource for a person if you're looking for data to substantiate some of your claims. So from that portal, we also have observed that over the last 2 years, we have seen a growing percentage of new users using social media. So the point is that we continue to see that increased usage of the social media platform. I teach diplomacy, for example, and I see the diplomats having to now explore how they can use Instagram and TikTok because that's one of the more favorable ways of engaging and interacting in their field. So what that is leading us to is how do we, as users, how do we want to shape how we communicate, how we interact, and how even we negotiate across platforms. So 67.9% of the global population now use the internet. And of course, I'm sure by the end of this year, 2025, we're going to see a number closer to the 70s. But mobile phones, many of us have that iPhone. I still have my little Samsung. It's working nicely for me. And a lot of us have also incorporated a lot of applications or digital applications on our phones so that we could keep abreast. Emails, I'm sure many of you all may have your emails on. You have your WhatsApp, and you may have other modes of communication so that you could keep in touch. And that's what digital or allowing us to keep the connections, keep the communications going. So, what are some of these most popular social media apps? What do you think? Do you think Facebook ranks first? Do you think WhatsApp? Just throw some comments out there. This is very informal, by the way. I like people to engage with me. So, what do you think are some of the most popular social media applications? TikTok, yes, thank you, Antonio. Instagram, yes. Facebook, TikTok, and you're right. And you're very correct. Thank you for sharing. So WhatsApp. WhatsApp is number one. Yeah. And we all know what a popular, inexpensive application this has been, and how we could really communicate with people across different countries, different platforms. So we see it stands, and this is, of course, 2024 figure, 83.2%. So we have WhatsApp first, Facebook. Many of us have Facebook group chats to share our research, to see how we could even establish new networks. So many of the groups, different groups, have Facebook pages. I could call out a few from the campus, the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network. We just saw our KIA, which crosses the 5 campuses in terms of membership. They have a lovely website, and it's a really great way of engaging with people and communicating what your goals, your mission, your vision is all about. YouTube. I use YouTube video clips all the time in my classrooms. I have even created one or two, which I will be using in the new academic year, not only for my student clientele, but in terms of now engagement as a faculty advisor for the Model United Nations. But TikTok and Instagram, these are two very, very key platforms. And more, we've seen heads of states using Instagram as a means of communication. But what this means for us is that we have to be extremely cautious in terms of how we use these social media platforms. And when we are using these social media platforms and we see a greater incorporation of artificial intelligence, what is happening directly is that we see now a greater level of content creation. So you could use tools such as Content Studio, it's an AI tool, or copy.ai, which allows you to generate properly or appropriate hashtags, captions. So all you do is you type in text or information, and it creates or it generates these hashtags for you. You also have things like Canva. I don't know if you've heard of Canva or InVideo AI. And what these have allowed is the creation of images or videos. Or, so you just enter in text as a prompt, and it generates particular images and videos for you. So artificial intelligence is really allowing you to see an enhanced version of your social media tools. I observed recently, I was looking at some of these sports brands, and they have really integrated some of the AI. There's one called AI powered social listening. And what this particular tool does, it allows those smart brands to revolutionize how they do their social media engagement. So you are able to acquire through social listening, and as the name suggests, it allows you to see how people are thinking about what you have put online, and in so doing, allow you to change and enhance what you post online. And that's really increasing the numbers for some of these brands, these smart brands. Of course, like everything else, you have to be very mindful, yes, of the type of content that you post and also how you protect your platforms. And I think our initial or introduction show us why we really need to be very careful in terms of who we allow on our platforms. But why we use the internet? Of course, I'm sure many of you all use the Google Scholar, for example, because you're trying to find information. Google Scholar allows you to acquire information on persons who might be writing on a particular subject area, but it's more scholarly output that you receive. Very interestingly, and I was saying to one of my colleagues that you cannot be apprehensive about using some of these AI tools. So you have perplexity.com. So why not look at how you can engage with perplexity.com? You know, literature review in higher ed is a very important component in developing the research skills of our MPhil PhD students, our graduate students. And a literature review is a substantive aspect of their research writing. So let's have perplexity.com generate a literature review for your students' research, and then let them now critically assess what the output of perplexity.com has generated for them. So it allows the students, one, to get an idea of who is writing on a subject area, but most importantly, how that information can be now ingested, analyzed, and presented in a format that is more doctoral level. Staying in touch, you want to keep in touch. That's why we're using social media. That's why we want to look at how we could connect with people, watching videos. I use YouTube, a lot of YouTube clips from, Sir Attenborough, who is a climate change activist. I use a lot of his videos in my contemporary diplomacy classes. How to do things, yeah? Keeping up with the news. So these are all reasons why we look at and we explore different platforms via the internet. So we know that technology has established itself. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So we need to look at how we're going to balance AI integration within more so the educational field. So we're hearing about this concept of AI, artificial intelligence. It's come like globalization in the 90s. It becomes that new buzzword. Well, what is AI? So AI is a computer program, and it tries to replicate ways of thinking, learning, and even acting like a human being. And this is where the dilemma comes. Can AI outdo the human being? So humans, of course, they learn via their experiences, they experiment, they absorb information, even through the internet. But AI develop its skills and information through acquiring loads of data that's available online. But we see that AI is really being used a lot in the educational field, and it is revolutionizing the way that we learn and teach. So consequently, it is a significant aspect and a way for us to now look at really how we want to balance AI within our respective platforms. So digitalization and education technology is now becoming an integral part. The key focus here is two things, not only looking at the students, but looking at the persons who are disseminating information, whether you're an academic or administrative staff member. Generative AI with its various amount of tools has really captured our attention because it's easily to access, because it's very user-friendly, and it is very non-tech savvy. So for some of us who are not like Justin, quite technologically inclined and oriented, we can use generative AI. But of course, that has provoked a lot of reactions, and that's where the balance issue comes in. How do we want to really balance our use and adaptation of AI in education? So there are some very strong questions that need to be asked at this point. How or to what extent do we as educators want to integrate AI in our respective spheres of education? How can AI, or can AI rather, support and improve educational learning outcomes? Is it really a very reliable way of providing information? Or will it undermine the traditional way of learning and acquiring knowledge? How, if we do decide to incorporate it, how can we ensure that we use it very ethically and responsibly? So am I good so far? You could just do a thumbs up if I am not proceeding too fast, or if you're comfortable up to this point. Yeah. So we see ChatGPT, for example, and I think that's one that we really need to look at. ChatGPT is really changing the way that we are doing things, the type of essays that we're seeing generated all the time, and how do we grapple with this phenomenon? Yeah, educators therefore need to have a real sound understanding, and that has to come from the decision makers as to how we want to have these tools, what is going to be the impact on the education and the traditional ways of teaching, but very importantly, on the training, we will have to train staff in terms of how to engage with it. And that, of course, requires infrastructural improvements as well, which could be very costly. So it boils down to this. We have to have a framework in place, and we have to determine from that framework to what extent it's going to be incorporated, how we would each like to incorporate it in our respective portfolios, but it requires training, a lot of training. How we use prompts, how we're generating content, and how we're going to be guided by frameworks. So, like every tool that is introduced in our context, there are plus and there are minuses. So we know that AI has benefits. It could allow us to develop personalized learning where we identify and we could tailor content learning activities based on the individual needs or the student needs and their learning styles. So ChatGPT, quizzes, Google Gemini, these are AI platforms that could allow us to have adaptive learning, automated tasks. Automated tasks could help administrative duties with administrative duties. So lesson planning, communication between administration and students, even parents. That could allow through different AI tools like ClickUp and Otter AI to address some of those administrative tasks. Even teachers, how we want to engage with maybe our students, how we even communicate with our students, how we create our lesson plans. Those two, ClickUp, Otter AI, can help us with that. Data-driven insights. And I just spoke to that one, which is about students' performance, how we see students progressing in our classroom forums with face-to-face session, but also very importantly, online learning. So Quill Booth, Grade Scope, those are some of the AI tools that could help us to assess how students are intaking information. I don't know how many of you may have essay type assignments, but that there's a particular tool called Grammarly, for example, that could allow you to provide insights into sentence structure, syntax, typographical, grammatical errors, even how you construct your ideas. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that Dr. Chami is not also going to review and provide, but it can be used by students to help them do better essays for submission to their respective lectures, enhance accessibility. And that's really some of the adaptive tools that could help students with their diverse needs. So we have Duolingo and Squirrel AI. And I'm hopeful that as we proceed, that, settle could allow us some of these kind of sessions as well to get some practical insights in some of these AI tools, working along with some of course, our academic staff who utilize these softwares and these tools in their classroom settings. So, as I said, potential challenges where changing infrastructural needs, pay for internet access, of course, it's going to be very costly. How do we ensure the privacy? That there is no breach and unauthorized use of data or people's personal data that are within the confines of the university, bias and fairness, those ethical considerations, and biases are generated by AI tools. So how do we eliminate and ensure that whatever is generated, that there is no unfair or any sort of prejudices that are produced by some of these AI tools? Teacher training. So what tools, there is that fear, and it is a viable concern in terms of teachers' displacement with the introduction of AI. But I'll tell you this much. My engagement and attendance at certain AI conferences internationally have led me to feel very comfortable that the concern that we should really be having as educators is that level of skepticism not to engage with technology. Because I think the further we offset that, or we defer that, or we delay it, it is really going to compromise our role as educators. And it's not so much about losing a job, but enhancing your skills as an educator. The digital divide, we hear this in different contexts. Global North, global South, yeah? So AI information developed, it originated in the global North, but it is not quite adaptable to the global South. So we have that concern in terms of trying to always replicate something that the North created. And that's why we need to be very cautious in terms of our extent to which we want to integrate these applications. Our history is different. Our circumstances are quite different to the global North. So we really want to look at how or to what extent we want to incorporate. So this is just what I've basically touched on in terms of where we see a great thrust of AI in education. So we see it in the grading process. We see it as a form of helping with research, content generation. You could have e-tutors and data analytics. So I just alluded to some of that. So that is just to give you a sense of where we see a popularity with AI. And your writing tools, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Grammarly, Quillboot, Winston AI. These are all writing tools that could help both administrative and academic staff. So since this presentation is really about AI, and we want to kind of sway it in the direction of higher ed, but mind you, it is also appropriate for any educator at any level. you still have to have consultations. Yes, so we must have that engagement. And this is why I applaud the efforts of AKIA, because for quite some time, it has been speaking and inviting conversations through its conferences and through what we're doing today, which is webinars, etc., to get insights so that we can inform stakeholders on the campus, decision makers, about how we can integrate digital technologies. We need to develop an ethical governance framework, and I know that there is something in existence at this point in time, but how do we provide training and instructional guidance both to administrative staff and to the teaching staff on AI and digital use? Very importantly, as well, is we need to have an assessment in terms of the types of skills that is required now for the labor market, and how can we as educators try to equip our students with those types of skills to prepare them for the professional world. But what about the impact too on the labor market? I don't think enough research has been done on that area to really assess the impact of technology or technological use on the market. So where is all this heading? Because I'm looking at the time and I want to engage with. So I outlined 4 things that we can do as educators. And Justin, I think we already started to do some of this. So I'll start with the law support. We are preparing, or we are making attempts at trying to see how we could touch stakeholders. So I know that Settle has been working through Dr. Zephron and Dr. Hill, and Justin, you could tell me who else, in providing and working very closely with the Ministry of Education, myself and a number of other academics from Faculty of Science and Technology, and also from our SITS department, Campus Information Technologies Department, have been doing sensitization workshops on AI for primary and also secondary schools. And those have been very, very eye-opening experience in terms of, the fact that people are not fully engaging, but more so are not aware of the possibilities. What is AI? The possibilities. And I think there's a lot of room here for us to really engage further by providing workshops, seminars, and webinars. In terms of technology, data management systems, what it is that we need to have in place to allow for institutional support for AI development. How do we want to coin research in this area? How do we want to develop maybe a caucus group for the campus on AI? Curriculum development. Do we have courses specifically designed that could help with AI concepts, developing AI content? I teach diplomacy. Digital diplomacy is one of the sub areas, and I have looked at how to integrate it in a more meaningful way to help with learning outcomes and skills enhancement for my students. And what type of training do we need? Pedagogical training, ongoing support, mentoring. Technology is evolving, and as such, we need to have that constant training and mentoring. So our online classrooms means digital learning for everyone. We should really continue to have the traditional, and that's why I'm calling it a balance. Face-to-face, nobody can dispute face-to-face. I still hold on to the face-to-face, so my classes tend to be blended. But I like engagement. But with rising demands for technological use, we have to learn how to balance. So my presentation would end at this point, and I don't know how many of you all have ever tried to really integrate or use AI tools in your teaching practices, but please feel free to share some of those concerns, and then any other questions. I will stop at this point, and I just want to say thank you
Thank you so much, Dr. Chami, for such an insightful presentation. I don't know if anyone could chime in terms of the current slide. Some concerns that you may you may encounter in introducing AI tools in your teaching practice, and perhaps even some solutions. Now that you know some of the hurdles that may come up, what are some things that, right, as to see Antonio said, one major concern is that many students are using AI tools such as a crutch, sorry,
Yes.
rather than a tool, letting the tool do the work for them and not really learning anything in the process. So I guess that connects to the ethical issues you mentioned, correct?
Correct. And yes, you, if I may call you Antonio, you're spot on. So we see it all the time with generation of not only essays, but trying to look at assignments and see how they can use different portals. So Antonio, here's my experience of that. So part of my assessment, and more so because I am at the graduate level, is about literature review, right, Justin? We all know this too, Claire. And in consultation, Justin and I work very closely together. Justin suggested to me, and it was superb. Do a case study, a scenario, give them a scenario. Make the literature review of less percentage. When you give them a case scenario, or you ask them to develop a case scenario, ChatGPT can't do that for diplomacy. They have to really put on their thinking caps now and really do that. Yeah. You want to give them a position paper? Have them create a position paper. You don't give them a resolution, you have them devise one for you. Yeah. So that is how you really have to read, you have to seriously modify your not only your teaching methods, but your assessment methods. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying that we really need to adapt very quickly because the technology is rapidly evolving. Yes, your teaching methods, Josiah, Mr. Josiah. Um, yes, your
Yes.
teaching methods. And I don't know, you could share with us maybe how, if you have modified any of your teaching methods. Um, I know that I have now utilized ChatGPT to generate essays, and I have my students critique it. I think that's a
Very
fantastic
good.
way
Yeah.
of getting feedback and helping them to understand why the response is not appropriate for graduate level research. Yeah,
And things like that help to develop the critical thinking skills that you really
definitely,
want, you know, that they can,
definitely.
yes, it's something that was generated through AI, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, whichever platform, Copilot, just to name a few. But when you can have a discourse that was generated by any of those platforms, um, have students examine and deconstruct the output of those platforms and really find the faults in them, if you want to say that, or the weak points or areas for improvement, then I think that develops their critical thinking skills beyond, and it also highlights that that ChatGPT and all these other platforms may be quite efficient, but there's still room for improvement, or there's still the need for human input. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
more than just the prompt engineering.
No, yes, correct. And I think too, Justin, we have to put ourselves in the millennial age as well. Yeah. We're
Mhm.
dealing with people who are very tech savvy, but everything is rapido, as we say, instant. Yeah. And we could still allow them to pause by using some of these digital tools, still have them appreciate the value of learning. So I
Yeah,
think if you try to have that kind of balance in your teaching, it will be a more receptive way by the millennials you. But
yes.
Justin, you've been very shy to share your experience with some of these workshops because you're working.
Yes,
I know that for sure
yes,
with some of
yes.
these millennials, yeah? So,
Um,
your observation as well.
Definitely. You know, the thing is that, I mean, you can't necessarily blame students for using AI, sometimes in excess in their assessment. So even in the professional arena where persons might just use AI to generate things, wholesale and retail. Sometimes it's because, and just to be, I wouldn't say devil's advocate, but to sort of present the alternative view, sometimes they may, in the student's case, they may be doing so because if you're giving them a large essay of X thousand number of words, the length of time it would take to really come up with that essay, they are thinking, I'm just trying to highlight from their point of view, um, why spend all that time to come up with, struggle to make these X thousand number of words, when you can just put it in ChatGPT and ChatGPT will do it in seconds, right? Keep in mind that the average student has multiple courses and therefore multiple assessments around the same time. So they are thinking in terms of efficiency and what would take less time and really just to pass the course. Likewise, yeah, just trying to contextualize it for everyone. In some cases, for the professional, the working person, it might be a similar reasoning where okay, why take all this time to fight up and produce this synopsis or this blurb or this whatever it might be, this report, when really you could just put the statistics in ChatGPT and it will do the analysis
Generate,
for you. Yeah.
yes, generate
So you
content.
understand, and it'll do it in less time. So you can understand that. But when it comes to teaching and learning, remember the learning outcomes, yes, might be to do this and to do that and whatnot, but you want the goal is to develop certain skills, right?
Right,
And so this is why the emphasis now is almost like another paradigm shift, has to go towards we did do it during the pandemic, alternative assessments or authentic assessments, where
correct.
instead of there's what's that saying really is that there's a move or transition that needs to take place from let's say online quizzes or long essays, etc., to something now where students can really create and really apply certain um tenets and skills and really help to develop their skills. So and that's why I guess with Dr. Shami, the I guess it resonated with her that advice that it's easy to produce an essay, especially in the online environment, but it's not as easy to contextualize it, especially with something
Right.
that is current, with something that has some local context to it, or some that requires some critical thinking skills or authenticity. And so that's the kind of assessments and even the learning strategies, teaching strategies that you might want to adopt in that regard, right?
Yes. I see a gentleman in the portal making on the chat. Yeah,
Yes,
you are spot on. And
yes,
this is
yes.
why it's fantastic when you're teaching diplomacy. Because
Yes.
because so here's how I do it, right? So we know there are enough crises in the system. So select one, yeah? But here's the catch. So they have to not only assess the situation, but they have to provide me also with who says what and why you think that you would want to agree with a particular perspective. AI can't generate that for you. Yeah. So you have to read. So I would point them in the direction of a scholar with a real world problem. And this is what I said, with Justin giving me that I have put either you develop a scenario or you refer them to a scenario, and
Yes.
then you have them devise solutions. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we know Gaza, that conflict has been ongoing for some time, geopolitical shifts. So and you're right, we have to keep changing the methods of how we teach. You have to be constantly innovative and inventive.
Mhm.
Um, and technology is putting that greater emphasis and more workload on us as educators. And I think Dr. Zephyrin would agree with me that perhaps we need to, have more workshops, practical ones,
Yes.
on how we could look at skills development and using certain AI tools. I
Yes.
know that they
And
offer staff some of that already, yes, how you
mhm.
could devise some of the
Yes. And maybe something we can look into in terms of the webinar series from IKEA as well. It wouldn't hurt to provide that sort of insight, maybe a workshop. So you might look out for that, guys. Possibly a workshop in the future on the same, because it may take a little more than just a presentation and so on to develop that skill set. So definitely you can look out for future sessions, online sessions, or even face-to-face where necessary, that we can help to at least IKEA can help in meeting that need, because it's something that
Yes.
affects not just higher education and administration, but also teaching and learning and administration, but also even in other educational levels, other professional circles, and so on. I will say
Yeah.
this before I go to the other comment from Francisco in the chat, that I see we have here some persons from the National IP Office, Intellectual Property Office of Trinidad and Tobago as well. And I do remember, I'm not sure if it was that group, I was doing some training session for that group. And it may be that group or another group that I gave them a case study. And it was something along the lines of using something current, but well, at that time current, but still required them to develop their critical thinking skills and to apply the principles that were taught. And it was something along the lines, I think it was Beyonce and the IP, um, what you call it, copyright issues, I believe. I may be wrong, I'm just paraphrasing, because it was during the pandemic, but it was something along those lines with music and IP law and really getting them. So I was using something that was current at the time. So ChatGPT couldn't really help in that regard. And and also the get them to solve that issue, or to how they can apply principles that were taught. And so, right, and Miss Mohammed is saying that yes, it was that. Okay, yes, it was that
Yes.
case. So at least you have evidence, guys. So it was something that was fun, and that fun for them, and that they could identify with, because it was some current music artists and so on, and a current situation, a legal um um situation altogether. And it was something that proved quite beneficial. I see in the chat also insists on the ethical character of the professional that is not granted by the AI. Yes. Yes. So it must have, one must have some sort of moral compass, and feeling that there must be some sort of some policy or consequences in when an ethical use of AI is detected. Yeah. So
Correct.
because
Yeah.
if there are no consequences, then why not do it? That's how some people may think. So you want to have that safety net that may help in that regard, even in a professional circle. Because sometimes, and I know the IB officers are here, sometimes whatever you get in AI is not necessarily original content. So even if you say it's
Yeah.
yours, there are certain legal ramifications that could take effect. Yeah. Any other questions? I know we just
I see Dr. Fong, right?
uh-huh.
I think so Dr. Fong, I just returned from an AI in teaching conference in Orlando. Interesting that you talk about the courses out of the US, but you had a blend of different, it's primarily professors presenting from across not only United States, they had Canada, England, one or two from Europe. And the interesting thing is about this particular conference is people and how they're using practically AI in their classroom forums. So it's practical sessions on AI. And I think we do stand, so I support your comment. We do stand to learn a lot from sharing with some of
Yes.
these courses. Hi, Doug. Good day.
Yes, lovely to see you. Thank you for a very informative session. And yes, we need to have more and more of these. While I know this is actually aimed at IKEA, and Justin knows about the opportunity that came to us from SAS, brokered by the Commonwealth Secretariat. And
Yes.
they have offered to us a suite of courses through that. Once you have a UE email, you can access, but we have started the engagement through the settles. I know the Monica, because I figure that we know that the students are using it, and the whole idea that we need to bring our faculty and staff up to speed. So I mean, this is in tune with that. But I know there was a good engagement with the settle here at Mona. And I don't know, Justin, Mervyn may have shared that experience with you as well. But
Yes.
really to see how we can take advantage of all the opportunities to learn. And while we've started with faculty, we also need to extend this to administrative staff, because there are so many tools that we can use to make life so much easier. And but using it ethically and is critical. But just to make sure that we share that. And yes, I saw a question about an AI policy. Yes, I know there's something in the works. And I do hope that it's been in the works for a while. So I will need to check and see
Yeah.
if it has actually gotten to the stage of being
Status of it.
approved. Precisely. But thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Fong.
Mm.
Um,
But you know, it's interesting, Dr. Fong.
mhm.
Most of the institutions at that conference just had like broad guidelines. There was nothing like a solid policy, and that I found very fascinating when it came to AI use, Justin. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Just
And
some
I think
broad guidelines.
yeah, and I think Antonio was saying something along those lines. That is an
Okay.
excellent tool, and it's almost like in some cases, some persons may see it as playing catch up because AI is advancing so quickly. I think, but you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Shami, with even if it's not a full-fledged policy, at least if there are guidelines. And that's one of
Mm.
the things that we have, at least in our particular context at UE, we have advised on the same, that in lieu of the policy becoming that official policy, because a policy takes time to develop and to be implemented or operationalized. And then comes the administrative part of it and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, there are guidelines that can be put in place, let's say even at the course level. So a lecturer may decide how AI can be integrated in their course. Yeah? Because remember, a course outline serves almost as a contract between you and your students. And it's not just in higher ed, it can also be in a professional training environment. That
Yeah.
outline of the training serves almost as a contract of what, or guidelines of what to expect in the course, or also or training experience, training event, and or also what are the parameters within which things can, what is allowed, what's not allowed, etc., etc. So in some cases, we've had instances where lecturers say there's to be no use of AI in their courses, or there's to be AI based up to a certain extent. Of course, they have their own metrics and measures to police that. But so yeah, so those are more like guidelines. But when it comes to the policy level, we know that a policy may take a little while because you have the legal considerations, the implications on practice and teaching and learning and operationalizing of the policy and so on. So in lieu of that, I like what you said, Dr. Shami, the use of guidelines at the very
Yeah.
least. Yeah, because at least you're saying what is permissible or what's allowed, and to some extent what's not allowed. So I think
Correct.
that's good. And that's at the end of the day, that's really the first step that should be taken as opposed to something that is more punitive. You want persons to use AI, but not necessarily to abuse it. And that goes for any kind of technology, whether it's as simple as even using a car or a computer or the internet. Some persons may use it for destructive or unproductive means, and some persons may use it for productive means. You can use a car, you can abuse a car, but there are guidelines. That's why there's a user manual for the car, or user manual for your computer, or whatever device you're using. So that is something that one must be mindful of. Yeah, I see a listener saying there's a UE statement on the use of AI. Yes, there is.
Yes.
Yeah. But definitely, I know I'm mindful of the time, and I know officially we're supposed to end at in a couple minutes. I don't know if there are any other questions or comments. No? Okay. And of course, if the conversation continues, I mean, it doesn't have to end with this session. Um, Dr. Chami has provided an invitation in the chat that if you have any further questions, and this is not just restricted to higher education. Of course, there are implications for the secondary school level, the primary school level, elementary level, and the professional arena. So keep that in mind. So if you need any sort of information or comments or queries, you can definitely contact Dr. Chami. You can contact I guess myself as well. We're here to help and to really help you be not just proficient but effective in what you do. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Chami, for an excellent presentation. Clearly it was well executed and enjoyed by and insightful based on the feedback we're seeing in the chat already. All right. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you thank you for having me, and thank you for those who participated online today or attended. It's appreciated. And just one final,
Sure.
please attend IKEA 2025. If you can't make it face to face, I think there's the possibility of an online participation, but it is really a very good way of learning not only about higher ed, but different areas on higher education, internationalization, administration support, decision-making processes, how we are really trying to see as an institution across many campuses that kind of future way of approaching teaching, learning, and researching. Yes?
Definitely.
So thank you
And
again, Dr. Zafran, for having me.
You're most welcome, and thank you for agreeing to do this session with us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. On behalf of the president, Mrs. Casey Thompson, and the entire IKEA family, as it were, or executive team as well, thank you for joining us, and do have a great day.